Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare
Krishna
Hare
Krishna
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 Hare
Krishna
Hare
Hare Hare Hare
Hare
Ram
Ram Hare
Ram
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 Hare
Ram Hare Hare.
Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivsari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda हे कृष्णा करुणा सिंधु दीन बंधो जगतपते गोपेश गोपी कांत राधा कांत नमोस्तुते तप्त कंचन गौरंगी राधे वृंदावनेश्वरी वृषभानुसुते देवी प्रणमामि हरिप्रिये नारायणं नमस्कृत्य नरं चैव नरोत्तमं देवीं सरस्वतीं व्यासं ततो जयमुदीरये। बोलो श्री राधे गोलोकानंद भगवान की जय।
जय
बोलो श्रीमद् भागवतम की
जय.
जय। हरे कृष्णा।
Hare Krishna everyone.
Hare Krishna everyone.
कृष्णा तरुण।
Hare Krishna everyone.
हरे कृष्णा
Hare
निष्ठा।
Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
हरे कृष्णा मुनमुन रवि। हरे कृष्णा।
Hare Krishna, everyone. I will be driving today, so we'll be listening to the Bhagavad.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. That's fine, Ravi. All right. So श्रीमद् भागवतम कल हम लोग श्लोक 60th पढ़ रहे थे एंड जैसा कि वी नो कपिल मुनि मदर देवहूति को डिस्क्राइब कर रहे हैं, राइट, द ट्रांसेंडेंटल नॉलेज, एंड वन पार्ट ऑफ द ट्रांसेंडेंटल नॉलेज इज द विराट स्वरूप. सो पहले we are reading fundamentals of the material nature, right? So we read about those 24 elements, 5 plus 5 plus 5 plus 5 plus 4, 24 elements. Then we saw the Mahat Tattva. Then we saw how the Virat Swarup is being described. So the Virat Roop in the shape of egg has the 14 planets, yeah, and then how each of the Gyanendriyas and how the Swami of each of the Gyanendriya came in existence, right? So that's what we are currently reading essentially. So let's start with the Shlok 61. Anilji.
जी हाँ. मनश्च चंद्रमा जातो बुद्धे गिरां पतिः अहंकारस्ततो रुद्रचितम्. After the mind, the moon appeared. Intelligence appeared next, and after intelligence, Lord Brahma appeared. Then the false ego appeared, and then Lord Shiva. And after the appearance of Lord Shiva came consciousness and the deity presiding over consciousness. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Yeah. So Kapil Muni बता रहे हैं कि how everything has evolved, right? So first जो mind आया, after the mind, the moon appeared, right? So Swami of mind is moon. It says Manas Chandrama. Yeah, Chandrama is known for imagination. Like I don't know if you look at the astrology and all that, where moon is shows the imagination of that particular person, right? So after the mind, the moon appeared, intelligence appeared next, man, and then buddhi. Yeah, and buddhi ke swami kaun hai? Lord Brahma appeared. Yeah, it says buddhir buddhe giram pati hai. That's Lord Brahma. Yeah, and after the buddhi, so man, buddhi, and then the false ego appeared. That's the ahankar, right? As we know, suksham sharir has those three elements, right? Man, buddhi, and ahankar. Mind, intelligence, and ego. And who is the swami of false ego, ahankar, is Lord Shiva. Yeah. And then after the man, buddhi, and ahankar, that's when the appearance after Lord Shiva came consciousness, which is the attribute of the soul, and the deity presiding over consciousness appeared. Yeah. Says Rudrash Chitam Chetash. So that's how man, buddhi, ahankar, and the chit appeared. And those are the four elements, right? Out of 24, those are the four. Before that, we saw how the eyes appeared, how the nostrils appeared, So when the eyes appeared, how the Lord Sun appeared and all that, right? So in that order. So actually, it's a nice purport. Let's read this. Munmun?
Yeah. The appearance of consciousness after the appearance of false ego indicates that from the beginning, material consciousness is under the mode of ignorance, and that one therefore has to purify himself by purifying his consciousness. This purificatory process is called Krishna consciousness. As soon as the consciousness is purified, the false ego disappears. Identification of the body with the self is called false identification and false ego. Lord Chaitanya confirms this in his Sikastaka. He states that the first result of chanting the Maha Mantra, Hare Krishna, is that dirt is cleared from the consciousness or the mirror of the mind, and then at once the blazing fire of material existence is over. Hare Krishna.
Krishna. Yeah. So some of the important things mentioned here is, first of all, it's very clear that material consciousness. And what is the material consciousness? Right, our consciousness in touch with the material nature, right? We read that with the three gunas, yeah, three modes of material nature, Satogun, Rajagun, and Tamagun. And that consciousness conditioned, so we start thinking we are this body, yeah? That is the material consciousness. We think we are this physical body. And that is under the mode of ignorance, yeah? So what happens is then how do we really purify our consciousness? So that's what it's mentioning, that one therefore has to purify himself by purifying his consciousness. Yeah. And what is the purification process? That purification process is called Krishna consciousness. As soon as the consciousness is purified, what happens? Once our chitta is purified, then we are not conditioned. Our consciousness is more focused on the spiritual energy and not on the material energy. Then what happens is the false ego, which is the ahankar, like this is me, I am this body, that false ego disappears. And identification of the body is the false identification. And then how do you clear that consciousness? How do you purify the consciousness? How do you focus on Lord Krishna is the first result of chanting the Maha Mantra. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. So why do we chant that Maha Mantra? And it's called Maha Mantra because it refers to the Krishna and Rama and his internal spiritual energy, Hare. That's why this is Maha Mantra, right? And then what happens by doing the chanting, the dirt is cleared from the consciousness. So the material consciousness, slowly and slowly, as we have read in the previous chapters, slowly and slowly as we chant more and more and more, our soul gets purified, which means our consciousness gets purified. And that what happens is the blazing fire of material existence is then over. Because then we start realizing our spiritual real consciousness, who we really are. Yeah, so that's what is being mentioned here. So let's read this, Ajay.
The blazing fire of material existence is due to false ego, but as soon as the false ego is removed, one can understand his real identity. At that point, he is actually liberated from the clutches of Maya. As soon as one is freed from the clutches of false ego, his intelligence also becomes purified, and then his mind is always engaged upon the lotus feet of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Yeah. So the consciousness is purified, the ahankar is removed, the mind gets purified, the intelligence gets purified. And once everything is purified, then your consciousness is spiritual, and then you are focused on lotus feet of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And that's our original position as an eternal soul. Yeah. So that's what is being mentioned. So let's read the next shlok. Nisha.
Ete abhyutitha deva naivasyotthapane ashakan. Punara vivishuha khani tamut utthapayantu kramat. When the demigods and presiding deities of the various senses were thus manifested, they wanted to wake their origin of appearance. But upon failing to do so, they re-entered the body of the Virat Purush one after another in order to wake him. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, right? So Kapil Muni क्या बता रहे हैं? We saw all the demigods, all the devatas, which who are the presiding deities, right? जैसे आंखों के सूर्य देवता, then we have the Vayu Devata, Agni Dev, right? Of different senses and all that. That's what we read in the previous shloks. So they all got manifested and they wanted to wake their origin of appearance. So they were looking at their origin of appearance and they could not awaken that, right? So then what happened was, then they re-entered the body of the Virat Purush, which we, which is what is being described, one after another, in order to wake up the Virat Purush. Yeah. It says here, in order to wake the sleeping deity controller within, one has to rechannel the sense activities from concentration on the outside to concentration inside. In the following verses, the sense activities which are required to wake the Virat Purush will be explained very nicely. So we are going to see the sense activities which, how do we focus to wake up the Virat Purush. So let's see what happens. Jyoti.
Vahani var, I'm reading in Sanskrit. So Vahani vacha mukam beje no noda tishta tada virat pran granena nasike vayur noda tishta tada virat. The god of fire entered his mouth with the organ of speech, but the Virat Purusha could not be aroused. Then the god of wind entered his nostrils with the sense of smell, but still the Virata Purusha refused to be awakened. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, right? So what is being described is one by one, all the deities, all the demigods, right? Like Agni Dev, god of fire, Vahir, and he is god of Mukham, yeah, organ of speech. He entered the Virat Purush, but he couldn't wake him. He says, no, Adattista the Virat. So he could not wake him up. And same thing, Granena and Nasike, Vayudev is the honor demigod of the nostrils, right? As you know, remember if we read all the Gyanendriya and all that. And so he entered the Virat Purush, but again, Virat Purush refused to be awakened. Yeah? Tarun?
Akshini chakshusha dityo nodatishta tada virataha shrotrene kannon cha disho nodadistata tada virat. The sun god entered the eyes of the Virat Purusha with a sense of sight, but still the Virat Purusha did not get up. Similarly, the predominating deities of the directions entered through his ears with a sense of hearing, but still he did not get up. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, yeah. So the Surya Dev, who is the Chakshusha Aditya is a Surya, right? He entered and nothing, na adatista the Virat, yeah. Same thing with the Karno, right? The hearing deities, and he still did not get up, right? So, Munmun.
Tvacham Roma Bhiroshadyo Nod Tishta Tada Virat Retasa Shishramapupastu Nod Tishtata Virat. The predominating deities of the skin, herbs, and seasoning plants entered the skin of the Virat Purush with the hair of the body, but the cosmic being refused to get up even then. The god predominating over water entered his organ of generation with the faculty of procreation, but the Virat Purush still would not rise. Hare Krishna.
So one after another, you see a Tvacham, skin, and the water and demigods also entered the Virat Purush. Rinaji?
Kutam Vityurapanena Nudastet Tada Virat Hasta Vindro Valeneva Nudatistat Tada Virat. The god of death entered his anus with the organ of defecation, but the Virat Purush could not be spurred to activity. The god entered the hands with their power of grasping and dropping things, but the Virat Purush would not get up even then. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Yeah, so how each and every Gyanendriya and Karmendriya are being described, and each and every honor of those specific elements, and they are all, how they are all coming together in the Virat Purush. Yeah. So that's what is being described, Jyoti. Sachin?
विष्णुर् गतैव चरणौ नोदतिष्ठदा विराट नाडी नर्द्यो लोहितेन नोदतिष्ठदा virat. Lord Vishnu entered his feet with the faculty of locomotion, but the Virat Purush refused to stand up even then. The rivers entered his blood vessels with blood and power of circulation, but still the cosmic being could not be made to stir. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Yeah, so still could not awaken the Virat Purush. Yeah, Ajay?
Chitrangam mudram Sindhunur datishtat Hidram mansa chandro nodatisht tada virat. The ocean entered his abdomen with hunger and thirst, but the cosmic being refused to rise even then. The moon god entered his heart with the mind, but the cosmic being would not be aroused.
And like as you remember, right, the ocean was related to the abdomen, yeah, read in the previous shloks. And similarly, the Man and the Chandra, the moon, entered into the Virat Purush. And Jyoti, you are there?
Okay. I think you have to increase little bit the font.
Oh, what happened?
Little bit, the font has to be increased for me.
Oh, okay, that's fine.
Okay.
Better?
Thank you. Yeah, that's good. Buddhaya Brahmapi Hrudayam Noda Tishtas Tada Virata Rudro Bhimatma Hrudayam Noda Tishtatada Virat. Brahma also entered his heart with intelligence, but even with then the cosmic being could not be prevailed upon to get up. Lord Rudra also entered his heart with the ego, but even then the cosmic being did not stir. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Yeah, see how in this order it's being described. First the Karmendriya and Gyanendriya, right? And then the moon, and then the intelligence, which is Lord Brahma, yeah, and then Lord Shiva, Lord Rudra, right, for the Ahankar, the self-ego, yeah, they all one by one entered into the Virat Purush. Chittena hridayam chetyah kshetragyah pravishya dharta Virat tadeva purushah salila dudatishtata. So he says, however, when the inner controller, the deity presiding over consciousness, entered the heart with reason, at the very moment, the cosmic being arose from the casual waters. Yeah. So everything entered except the consciousness, but as soon as the consciousness entered the heart with reason, at that very moment, the cosmic being arose from the casual waters. Yeah. So that's why, like we see, like even in the human beings or anyone, like it doesn't matter if all the other elements are present, till the consciousness is there, only till then you will see the movement. Otherwise, you don't see any movement, right? The intelligence, all those things are maybe there, but the brain is there, right? But the consciousness is what is the most important thing, is what is being said, right? Chittena hridayam chetya kshetragya pravishyadada, right? So that's pretty interesting. Anilji?
Yatha prasuptam purusham pranendriya manodhya pravabanti vinayena nothap yatu mojasa. When a man is sleeping, all his material assets, namely the vital energy, the senses for recording knowledge, the senses for working the mind, and the intelligence cannot arouse him. He can be aroused only when the super soul helps him. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, yeah? The super soul, the consciousness helps. So read this purport. Tarun?
The explanation of Sankhya philosophy is described here in detail in the sense that the Virat Purusha, or the universal form of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is the original source of all the various sense organs and their presiding deities. The relationship between the Virat Purusha and the presiding deities or the living entities is so intricate that simply by exercising the sense organs which are related to their presiding deities, the Virat Purusha cannot be aroused. It is not possible to arouse the Virat Purusha or to link with the Supreme Absolute Personality of Godhead by material activities. Only by devotional service and detachment can one perform the process of linking with the Absolute. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, yeah? So if you need to get to the absolute, the devotional service is must. What is being mentioned? Anisha?
तमस्मिन् प्रत्यगात्मानं धिया योग प्रवृत्तया भक्त्या विरक्त्या ज्ञानेन विविच्यात्मनि चिन्तयेत्. Therefore, through devotion, detachment and advancement in spiritual knowledge acquired through concentrated devotional service, one should contemplate that super soul as present in this very body, although simultaneously apart from it. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Yeah. So, it says here, bhakti viraktya jnanena. That's how, like through the devotion, detachment, and advancement in spiritual knowledge. And how do you get all those three is through the concentrated devotional service. Yeah. And that's when we start getting the self-realization that super soul is actually present within our own body. Even though super soul is outside, but he's also linked and he's present in our own body. Yeah, is what is being mentioned here. So says here, Atmani Chintayeta, when we do the chinta, right? That's when we start contemplating that. And that comes with the chanting. It's a nice purport. So let's read this. Rinaji?
One can realize the super soul within oneself. He is within one's body, but apart from the body or transcendental to the body. Although sitting in the same body as the individual soul, the super soul has no affection for the body, whereas the individual soul does. Therefore, one has to detach himself from this material body by discharging devotional service. It is clearly mentioned here, Bhaktya, that one has to execute devotional service to the Supreme, as it is stated in the first canto, second chapter of Srimad Bhagavatam 1.2.7. Vasudeve Bhagavati Bhakti Yoga Prayojita. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Sachin?
When Vasudeva, the all-pervading Vishnu, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is served in completely pure devotion, detachment from the material world immediately begins. The purpose of Sankhya is to detach oneself from material contamination. This can be achieved simply by devotional service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. When one is detached from the attraction of material prosperity, one can actually concentrate his mind upon the Super Soul. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Yeah, see, it's again and again mentioned that when Vasudev is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, yeah, is served in complete pure devotion. That's when we start detaching ourselves from the material contamination, and it's a self-realization. Like as we start doing more and more devotion, chanting, I think the Super Soul, the Supreme Lord, helps us in understanding the knowledge also. Like once we do the bhakti, the gyan and everything else will come by itself. You know, so. Anilji?
As long, okay, as long as the mind is distracted towards the material, there is possibility of concentrating one's mind and intelligence upon the Supreme Personality of Godhead or his partial representation, Super Soul. In other words, one cannot concentrate one's mind and energy upon the Supreme unless one is detached from the material world. Following detachment from the material world, one can actually attain transcendental knowledge of the absolute truth. As long as one is entangled in sense enjoyment or material enjoyment, it is not possible to understand the absolute truth. This is also confirmed in Bhagavad Gita 18.54. One who is freed from material contamination is joyful and can enter into devotional service. And by devotional service, he can be liberated. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Mundan?
In the Srimad Bhagavatam, first canto, it is stated that one becomes joyful by discharging devotional service. In that joyful attitude, one can understand the science of God or Krishna consciousness, otherwise it is not possible. The analytical study of the elements of material nature and the concentration of the mind upon the super soul are the sum and substance of the Sankhya philosophical system. The perfection of this Sankhya Yoga culminates in devotional service onto the absolute truth. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Yeah, so that's what Kapil Muni is describing, the Sankhya Gyan, Sankhya Gyan. Yeah. And this ends the Bhakti Vedanta purpose of the third canto, 26th chapter of the Srimad Bhagavatam, entitled Fundamental Principles of Material Nature. So Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai.
Jai.
Yes, right. So we complete 26th chapter. I think it was a long chapter, but a lot of information about different presiding deities and so on and so forth. Right. So I think I'm going to pause here today, and then we'll see you tomorrow at 9:20 p.m. again. Yeah. And since Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Jayanti this week, we are continuing to hear the bhajan written by him, which actually describes the descendants of Lord Krishna, right? Supreme Lord Sri Krishna and then Lord Brahma and then Naradji and then Vyasdev and so on and so forth. Okay, so we'll continue to hear that, and then we'll see you tomorrow. Yeah.
Hare Krishna.
Jaya Dharma Dasya Khyati Shri Purushottama Jati Tahate Brahmanya Tirtha Suri. Jaya Dharma Dasya Khyati Shri Purushottama Jati Tahate Brahmanya Tirtha Suri. Vyasa Tirtha Taradas Lakshmipati Vyasadas Tahate Madhavendra Puri. Vyasa Tirtha Taradas Lakshmipati Vyasadas Tahate Madhavendra Puri. Madhavendra Puri बर शिष्य बर श्रीश्वर नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत वैभव ईश्वर पुरी के धन्य करिले श्री चैतन्य जगत गुरु गौर